You wake before dawn, and the first thing you notice is the smell. The harbor always smells of brine and tar, but this morning there's something underneath it. Something sweet, something wrong. You step into the street. The man who sold you bread yesterday is not at his stall. The woman who draws water from the cistern is lying in the alley beside it, and she is not asleep. You don't know it yet, but you are standing in the deadliest year your city will ever see. This is Constantinople in the spring of 541. Within 18 months, half the people you can see from this spot will be dead. Not from war, not from famine, from something no one can see, name, or stop. It will kill 50 million people, more than the Black Death, and almost no one alive today can even name it. History very nearly erased it, and that may be the most frightening thing of all. To understand what the plague takes from you, you first have to understand what you had. It is 541, and you live in the richest city on earth. 500,000 people. Streets that are actually paved, aqueducts that run clean, and above you, the dome of the Hagia Sophia is rising, so vast that the men building it aren't entirely sure why it stays up. Your emperor is Justinian, and he has a dream: to take back the old Roman world, all of it, and make Rome whole again. And for one shining moment, it looks like it's working. You pay your taxes in gold coins stamped with his face. You eat bread made from Egyptian grain. You cook with oil pressed in Tunisia. The whole Eastern Mediterranean is one living, breathing economy. Ships and roads and harbors moving food and people on a scale the world has not seen in centuries. It is beautiful. It is efficient. It connects everything to everything. And that is exactly why you are going to die. Because the grain that feeds your city comes by ship from Egypt. And in the holds of those ships, buried in the sacks of grain, live rats. And in the fur of those rats live fleas. And inside those fleas is a bacterium with a name you will never learn: Yersinia pestis. The ships have already left Alexandria. There is no stopping them now. It begins with a bite you never feel. A flea no bigger than a fleck of dust leaves the rat and finds you. Maybe at the market, maybe in your own bed. You don't notice. Why would you? For 2 days, nothing. Then 4, then 6. You feel fine. You go to work. You argue with your neighbor. You are, as far as you know, an ordinary person living an ordinary week. Then you find the lump. It sits in your groin or under your arm or on your neck, hard and hot and growing. By the second day, it's the size of an egg. By the third, an apple. They have a name for these swellings: buboes. It is where the word bubonic comes from. Then the fever takes you. And here is the part the survivors could never forget. As the fever climbs, the dying begin to see things. Dark shapes. Figures in the room that no one else can see, pressing down on their chests in the night. A lawyer named Procopius watched this happen across his whole city and wrote it down because he could not explain it. You can't explain it either. You don't have the word bacteria. You don't have the word infection. You know only this: something invisible has come into your home. It is pressing people into the ground, and there is nothing you can do to stop it. For most, from the first lump to the last breath is less than a single day. And you are not the only one. That is what no one is ready for. Not one death, or 10, or 100, but a city dying all at once, faster than the living can keep up. The bodies come first. They pile in the streets quicker than anyone can carry them away. The graveyards fill, then the open pits fill. In the end, the emperor orders his own soldiers to carry the dead up into the great defensive towers of the city walls, stack them inside, and seal the roofs shut. The smell reaches the water. Ships coming up the strait give Constantinople a wide berth because you can smell the city long before you can see it. And then the strangest thing of all happens. The city simply stops, not from a siege, from absence. The bakers are dead, the millers are dead, the men who ran the docks are dead. The free bread that has fed this city's poor since the days of Augustus, 500 years, quietly fails, because there is no one left to bake it. You go looking for food in a market where the stalls stand empty, not because of an enemy, but because the people who stood behind them are gone. The emperor himself has to throw open the imperial treasury and pay gravediggers a small fortune, because no amount of ordinary money will make a man touch the dead anymore. 250,000 people in one city in less than 2 years. And Constantinople was not even the worst of it. It was only the place where someone was writing it down. So you survive. Somehow the fever breaks, the lump drains. You bury who you have to bury, and you begin, slowly, to rebuild. The fields are planted again. Children are born again, the market fills back up, and then, a few years later, the lumps come back. This is the thing almost no one knows about the plague of Justinian. It did not come once, it came again, and again, and again, wave after wave for 200 years. Just as you rebuilt, it returned. Just as your children grew, it returned. You did not survive a disaster. You survived inside one your whole life, and so did your parents, and so would your grandchildren. Even Justinian caught it. The emperor of the known world lay in his bed with the swelling under his arm, the same as a beggar in the gutter. He lived. 50,000 of his people in those same weeks did not. And Procopius, the lawyer who tried so hard to describe it, by the end, he stops. In his later accounts, the language just falls away. No more comparisons, no more searching for the right words. Only names, only numbers, only streets. Some read that as exhaustion. I read it as a man who finally understood that describing the horror like a story had made it feel survivable, and it wasn't. There was simply nothing left to say. 50 million people, gone. More than the Black Death, a larger share of the entire world than that famous plague would ever take. And yet, you know the name of the Black Death, and you had probably never heard of this one until a few minutes ago. Here's why. The Black Death came 800 years later, closer to the printing press, closer to the painters and the writers who turned grief into art that still hangs on museum walls today. We remember it because it left us things to look at. The plague of Justinian left almost nothing. It happened in a world that wrote less, painted less, and survived less. It killed more, it changed more. And then it slipped out of human memory almost completely. But it was real, not a story, not a legend. In 2019, scientists pulled the genetic fingerprint of this exact plague out of a tooth. A tooth in a 1,500-year-old grave. They sequenced it in a laboratory. It happened, all of it. Every one of those 50 million people was as real as you are, right now. Every one of them was a baker, a soldier, a mother arguing with her landlord, a child learning to read. Every one of them was a whole world, and one of them was the man who, just yesterday, sold you your bread. History buried the plague of Justinian. And it buried others' catastrophes that killed millions and left barely a scratch on the memory of the world. I'm digging them back up, one at a time. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one.